Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps to get my channel promoted, and I really appreciate that. I'd also love it if you'd leave a comment. I like to hear things like constructive criticism, ideas for videos, how you do things. Those are always kind of interesting to find out. So leave a comment. Today I'm going to do 3 different kind of fall-like trees. A couple of them are pretty stylized. 2 of the pairs are going to have some copper incorporated, and I think they'll end up looking, pretty autumn-like. But we'll see. I think they'll be kind of fun to make. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people, my patrons over on Patreon. I have a new one, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this name. It's P-O-S-A-U-N-E, Posone. So I wanted to welcome you to the Patreon, and I think you'll find that my other patrons are a great group of people with lots of knowledge and who are very friendly. So enjoy your time over there. And I also wanted to thank my older patrons too, who've been around for a while. Thank you for your support. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 14,100. We continue to grow, which is amazing. Some of you leave some really nice comments, and I really appreciate that, because like tonight, I'm getting a late start and it's going to be a late night, but thank you for letting me know that you're getting some good out of this. I also appreciate the super thanks and the buy me a coffees, because silver's gotten so expensive, so thank you for that. All right, well, let's get started on these projects. This is one of my design idea books, and I find these super useful for coming up or sketching out my ideas in advance, which is something I started doing when I started doing the YouTube channel. I started also putting on the back of these are available on my merch store, incidentally. I started putting conversion charts. There's fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find pretty useful sometimes. There's a couple of other ones too. So let's see. So I've sketched out 3 different earrings, and I actually made one of each one just to see how they ended up looking. This is the first one. It's got a little branch made out, or a trunk made out of silver. I used some 6 gauge half round, along with a little bit of 8 gauge half round for the 2 sticking off branches, and then a copper disc that's about 18 gauge, which is roughly a millimeter thick, or 1.02 millimeters. 6 gauge half round is, let's see, 4.09 millimeters wide. 8 gauge half round is 3.25 millimeters. I think I may do this one second, but the difference on this one is going to be, it's going to have a copper rectangle in the background with rounded corners, and I'm going to hang that behind this kind of barren tree that I made that's kind of swirly. And it's going to have a texture on it. I haven't done the texture on this one yet, but we'll do that with a texturing hammer and try and get it to look kind of bark-like. And then finally, this one will just be by itself, but they'll be opposite of each other. And again, I used the 8 gauge and the 6 gauge and some skinnier half-round wire, I think it was 12 gauge, to make the trunk and the branches. And then on this one, I've got these... just bought this nice little bag of little Tourmaline Cabochons, and there's a variety of colors, and there's these 2 unusual ones that are kind of brownish yellow, almost a greenish brownish yellow somewhere there. And so one of those is going to go, oops, I keep flipping it over. One of them is going to go right about there to kind of stand out with these other circular objects, some of which are just silver balls, some are circles made out of 18 gauge wire, and some are silver balls soldered inside of circles made out of 18 gauge wire. So we'll put a variety of those together, and I think this one's going to be the most time consuming, at least it was when I was making the first one. So, but let's start with this one here, and I've already pre-cut a disc, and I kind of I did a perfunctory polish just so it wasn't, because it was pretty corroded when I cut it from a piece of old. Let's see if I can find that piece of scrap copper. See, it was pretty oxidized, so I tried to clean it up a little bit. And then we need to make a trunk. out of silver. So let's look at the prototype again. So this one's going to need some cleanup still, but I soldered the branches and the trunk on the front of this one, so it's going to have just kind of a stylized tree, and I'll clean this up so it doesn't have that excess solder up there. But so those are going to be kind of what, mid-century modern looking stylized trees, sort of, I think. So we'll make one of those first. In order for me to taper it like that, the easiest way I've found, without breaking out the belt sander, is to use my miter vise jig, just so I got some way to hold on to it. And then I'm gonna use my file and just file this. Let me put these stones away so I don't lose them. Oops, I just lost that one. Alright, so we'll just spend some time filing this. If you've never been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for pretty much everything, and a liquid flux that I dribble on for the most part. My torch is a Smith air acetylene torch called the Smith Silversmith model, and it's a great torch for this. It's not so hot that you run the risk of melting things all the time or oxidizing things, because you're not pumping any excess oxygen into the flame. But it's far hotter than, say, a propane or a butane torch. Those are the most frequently asked questions I hear. We went to a gem show in Denver last week and bought a bunch of new stones, the tourmalines included. Actually going to go tomorrow to a different one. Once I get this roughly sculpted, I'll use an abrasive white silicone wheel on my rotary tool in order to kind of smooth this out, shape it a little better. Right now I'm just removing, a lot of material. Alright, so now you can see we've got our little trunk there. We need to add on some of these tapered pieces of 8-gauge head. I'm going to use this as a guide. First one I just kind of free-handed. We'll cut that off there. Since these are kind of curved here, on where we join them, we're going to have to kind of slant it underneath that way a little bit so that they meet up nicely. So if I'm careful, I could initially cut it a little bit like that. And then when we file it, we'll file it underneath like that. I'll just use this one as a guide for the next one. I'll hold it up against the back there. I think that's fine. Once it's attached, though, I may file this one just a little bit shorter. So let's solder those on there. If you're new to this, I do something called pick soldering a lot, which is where I use this, which is a titanium little sharpened piece of metal. And if you pick up some solder with it, and you time it just right, you can place the solder really precisely, and it's a really useful skill. So if you're interested, I'll put a link up there for you. First we'll flux this. Get it a little crusty. Crusty's always good with silversmithing. Oops. picked one up and then I lost it. The trick on doing this really is wait until it's up to the soldering temperature before you stick it in there. Or at least try to do that. I don't always get it right on the mark, but I have a tendency to get a little impatient. File that off and get it all cleaned up, and then we'll solder it to that copper. So I got this cleaned up a little bit. I have a 18 gauge jump ring and that piece of copper, and I'm going to solder the jump ring closed, solder it to the disc here, and then I'll sweat a little bit of solder onto the back of this. Sweating solder is where you pre-melt some solder into a surface that you want it to, where you want it to be. That way it's right where it's in the right place. And you can remelt it then when you place that somewhere else. I will demonstrate. So first let's solder that ring closed. Now we can butt it up against the edge of this thing, right where the solder is. And then most of the heat needs to go on the copper piece here because that's what needs to get up to the soldering temperature for that solder to in here. There you go, you can see it just jumped over there. Okay, so now, let's pick up a little, I'm going to put a little bit up there, a little bit here, a little teeny bit on each of these arms. The reason I sweated some solder on the back rather than laying a piece on here or something where it's touching both is it'll avoid some of the messiness of the solder on here. You wouldn't know from my first one because I did kind of a sloppy job, but this one I think is a little bit neater. So, alright, so that's the first two. I'll put a 20 gauge wire on each of these after they're all cleaned up and everything. I'll show them to you at the end. So let's throw these back in the pickle. And we'll get on to the next one. So I have here a piece of copper. I'll round the corners on that eventually, and I also have a tree that I made with some kind of wavy lines, pretty much the same way I did with the other one, although I think I did use 8 gauge half round for that one, but then or no, did I? I don't remember. I think I did, but then on these two I used the 12 gauge. So it was just a little bit less filing to do. And what I'll do is I'm going to texture this with my texturing hammer. So let me get it cleaned up first and then we'll texture it. I'm going to grab my bench block here, and where's that hammer at? Okay, so this one has exchangeable heads on it. I'm going to use this one because it's kind of coarse. And we're just going to kind of beat up these branches here. So I'll get these both nice and polished up and hook them on an ear wire just like the other ones. And these will have freedom of movement, so I think it'll be kind of interesting. I thought about texturing the copper, but since the front part has a texture, I think it might look better if I don't. Although sometime I might try texturing the background too a little bit to see how it looks. Maybe just hammering it or something with a peen. But I'll get that cleaned up and I'll go ahead and make a second one of these. let that and this pickle, and then I'll texture that one as well with a texturing hammer. And in the meantime, we'll start doing the third one. Okay, so here's the third one. You can see I've got the trunk is just a main trunk, 2 branches, which I'll shape here and solder together, and then we'll start adding these other things. And I'll need to make some little silver balls, and we'll do that on the charcoal block with some scrap wire. And these rings are just the same kind of rings I was using, 18 gauge wrapped around a piece of 14 gauge. This one was a little bit bigger one. And then we'll do this just the opposite direction as this one. So probably won't make you watch me do this over and over again. I'll turn it back on when we're starting to shape them. So I've got these tapered, and I went ahead and curved the 2 branches coming off the stem. We got to go kind of the opposite direction of this one. So if I turn it upside down, kind of if I do it exactly the same where it's right side up, then it'll be opposite. So I usually use, when I'm trying to bend stuff sideways and kind of waviness like that, I'm going to use my round nose pliers. I'm just kind of trying to figure out where the best place is to put it to get the curve that I want. At the top we have this little kind of, just a little tweak there. Like that. And then further down here, line this up on this one. Kind of right here is where band needs to go, and then kind of over here. Go further than that. Oops. That's looking better. Now we need to get this to go back the other direction. This is where it probably will start to get pretty hard because it's getting real thick at the end here. So it's going to try and turn on me. Still need to go a little bit further. That's pretty close. I think that's probably good enough. The last thing I did to widen this bottom out here, use my bench block. Let's see if I can cut this off right. And you can just either use the chasing hammer, I'm using a texture hammer with the flat head on it. Now we need to figure out where these other branches come off. Right there. Right there. Okay, let's solder this together, and then we'll add in our bezel, and then we'll start making those other little components. I wanted to thank all of the people who've purchased my ebook recently. I really appreciate that. If you haven't heard of that, it's a guide to all of my videos from 2023. It includes, I made a sketch on this one. It includes a sketch for each of the videos. Final picture when it's done. More pictures if it's a multi-project one like this. It's got a list of materials you need to make it. It's got a difficulty rating, which is probably a little subjective on my part. But I try to make a reasonable guess as to what they will do. And it's got some notes I made about each project, just because there's always things that come up that you might want to mention. And finally, there's a link right to the video itself. Alright, let's solder that in there. Okay, so in order to make those little balls, I got my charcoal block out and I cut a bunch of little pieces of 18 gauge round that was laying around here. And I cut a variety of sizes so that I have some choices. And this is supposed to look like kind of a stylized tree, I guess, with fruit on it or something. Just make these into balls. Now, if you look at some of these, some of them are circles, some of them are balls, and some of them are circles with balls in the middle. So to make the circles with balls in the middle, looks like I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little ones and one that's a little bit bigger. So got these here. Let's move this out. Cut some more solder so we have plenty. So let's put a little ball in each one of these. There's one. Got a big one too here. Now we just need to start adding things. It's a little ball that goes right out here. No. Got to remember I'm doing the opposite here. Okay, let's solder those on, and then we'll make some more balls. We got a freebie up there. That one did it on its own. Meaning that there must have been enough solder on the outside of that ring to where it just soldered to the trunk when it got hot enough. Okay, so we got one that goes right in the crook there. And then on top of that, we have this other one of these. And then we stick one of these in there. Kind of like that. Got I think I got all of them. Let's cool this off and take a look at it. Pretty close. Those are fun. Alright, I'll get those cleaned up and then we'll set those stones at the end and I'll show you all three of them. Okay, got everything polished up. I went ahead and set the stones. If you're interested in seeing how to do open back bezels for cabochons, I'll put a link up here for you. Here's the ones. Got a little better polish on this one than I did on this one, but I kind of like them. And we've got these ones, which I think are going to move nicely. Those are pretty cool. But these ones are amazing. I like these ones. I think they came out really well. You know, and that's pretty much what I was looking for there, so. Oops. I missed a loop on there. Oh well. Too late now. Okay, I'll take some better pictures and put these at the end. Well, that was the 3 autumn tree earring styles. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. Before you go, why don't you check out a few other videos over on my YouTube channel page. I have over 370 videos now. I'm putting out 3 per week. I try to produce a variety of videos at different levels so that people who are at different stages of their metalsmithing journey will be able to find something useful. So check those out. Come back, subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And visit the video description down below. There's a link to my ebook if you want to buy that. There's a link to my merch store where you can get those nice design idea books. And there's even a link to my Patreon if you want to check out more about that community. It's a really nice place over there. There's a few other important links, so check those out as well. Take care. Come back and see us again. Happy silversmithing.